Sorry about that interruption. I am going to try and finish this. Never mind it, he said it before I could ask. It was a fair fight. You could even say I won. Who was it? I demanded. Never mind, I said. Just keep your head down. Let me take care of it. I can take care of it. No, you can't. If you did, they'd say, I don't know, but you'd be the one in trouble, and your dad too. They're all watching you. He didn't say who they meant by they. There were eyes everywhere again, reporters gathering like crows in dark winter coats and hats, freshly purchased scarves and gloves that weren't warm enough for our winters. Over on 9th, Mrs. B's was full to bursting, and so was the motel out by the highway. The diners and bars were crowded every night with noisy reporters, and Charlie had started to grumble that it was hard to get in and out of the Sportsman's Cafe for his lunch break. I sat at our table in the cafeteria, tray untouched, as Percy ate his meatloaf and cottage cheese. Around us all was quiet. No chatter, only whispers. I felt eyes in the back of my head and wished I could be more like Percy, still able to fake a good appetite with his face swollen. I even wished I was more like Pilson, who stood in the center of the reporters, ever ready with a quote or a quip. Even every photographer taken a portrait of a grim man of the law, the crease in his forehead nearly too deep for the ink to capture. He says it brings him no personal joy, I said, and Percy stopped eating, that Marie will face the electric chair. He says it's his responsibility as a prosecutor to the victims and their families. To us, the good, honest citizens, afraid to turn off our lights. Did he say it with a straight face? Percy asked. I don't know, it was in the paper. I chanced to glance around the lunchroom and caught Carol's eye. She was sitting with her friends. The other girls were a gaggle of furtive glances and murmurs, but Carol simply looked at me, and I imagined for a second that I could lay my head on her shoulder until the reporters left, until Marie was gone, until everybody forgot that it was me in the room taking shorthand about vampires. I stood. Where are you going? Percy asked. Not hungry. I took my lunch tray and dumped the food into the trash, and Rudy Bartholomew yelled, Going back to the jail? I'm going back to class, I said without turning around. Steve's murder gave you a heck of a story, I guess. I made a pair of fists and looked. Rudy Bart stood near the center of his table wearing the leather jacket he never seemed to take off. I was a little surprised he had the nerve after what he'd done to us in the cemetery, but that was our fault, I guess. We'd kept quiet, so we'd been the ones to teach him that he could get away with it. Percy jumped up and came over to stand with me. You think Michael wants to be in the papers? He's not the one following the reporters around, constantly combing his hair in case one of them wants a picture. I've seen you all do that, Percy pointed around the cafeteria. He's going to make everybody feel sorry for her. Don't you care? I suppose you'd kill her with your bare hands, I said a little louder than I meant to. I looked into their eyes. I glared at them. Kids I'd grown up with, kids I knew. But I didn't know any of them as well as I'd come to know Marie. I bet if I did, they would have their secrets too. Percy and I walked out. Behind us, the cafeteria ladies found their voices and told Rudy to sit down and go on eating. I don't know what your old man was thinking, making you keep on coming to school, Percy said. Mo's not the best dad, but even he would have locked me up at home with the curtains closed until this blew over. This isn't going to blow over. We walked through the halls feeling lousy, and someone shoved a newspaper in my face. Marie's photograph was on the front page, the picture of her at the courthouse in my mother's red lipstick, beneath the headline, 16-year-old Loita, or Bride of Dracula. The kid holding it was Nick Clinton, a decent enough fellow and a sort of friend of mine. It wasn't his fault, he just had bad timing. My mom's making a scrapbook, he said, of the articles. She said someday we'll want to remember the days when Black Deer Falls was famous. I hit Nick in the face. Then I hit him again when he fell over and over, so when Percy finally pulled me off, his face was marked red and his lip was bleeding. Have you lost it? He cried as he struggled to one knee. He had his hands up to catch the blood dripping down his chin. I'm sorry, I said numbly and let Percy pull me away before I could throw up all over the linoleum floor. No one will blame you, Percy kept saying, but we should cut for the rest of the day just to be safe. I don't want you to get in trouble, Perce. He waved his hand. I won't get into trouble. This my old man will understand. Percy slowed the car to a crawl as we approached the parking lot of the sheriff's station. The lot was peppered with strange cars, most of them kept running to stave off the cold, and inside each was a reporter or a pair of them, ready to leap out at the first sign of movement. Are you sure I shouldn't just drive on by? We could hide out at my place or head over to the bowling alley in the rapids. I shook my head. I couldn't avoid it forever, and there was really nowhere to run. He pulled in, and I looked at him gratefully as he parked. You haven't asked me about anything since the story about the confession came out. I figured you'd been questioned enough. But it's different, I said. You're my friend. I don't mind you asking. He sat and considered it, his eyes shifty over his swollen cheek. Do you believe it? He asked. What she told you? I don't know, I said. Should I? He shook his head. Of course I shouldn't. But what he said was, I just keep thinking about all the marks in our trees and on Steve's headstone. What it felt like out there in the woods. He looked at me. That thing you said about that girl in New England, whose people digging her up and cut her heart out, was that true? Yeah, I said. It was true. He gave a big sigh. Then I guess I wouldn't put anything past anybody. He looked out the window. 3 reporters had gotten out of their cars and were headed our way. Here they come, he said. Good luck. Thanks, Perce. I kept my head down and said nothing as I made my way inside. Not even so much as a no comment. Inside the station, Nancy sat behind the booking desk, typing. You should have called first, she said glumly. I'd have had Bert go out and order them to stay in their cars. Would that have worked? She shrugged and went back to typing. It was oddly quiet inside compared to the commotion in the parking lot. My father had gone home for lunch, and Bert was at a loss about what to do with the reporters. He peered out at them from behind the deputy's desk like he was trying to decide how he was going to get to his patrol cruiser. As I passed the hallway that led to the jail, I got a heavy feeling, like I sometimes got when the cells weren't empty. Just a few drunks and disorderlies from last night, said Nancy. Charlie has to bring them in after a fight broke out at the Eagle. They were scuffling with the out-of-towners. Has anyone been up to see Marie? No one but me, and I've been here since 9. I went up and knocked on the door that led to our old kitchen and the woman's cell. Come in, she said. You should have asked if it was me. It could have been anyone with so many folks in town. No one else would have knocked. How are you? I asked. I'm fine. She was seated on her cot like normal, her dark hair tied back with black ribbon. A lunch tray sat on her writing desk, the food untouched. It wasn't much, just a sandwich and a macaroni salad, but it was uncommon for Marie not to eat. What are you doing back here, Michael? I thought they'd keep you away now that they've got their story. Is it true what he said? I asked. Who said? What Pilson said about your stepfather. For a moment she seemed angry. Her jaw tightened. She curled her lip. Which part? That he's the killer. Of course not. She made a dismissive sound. He lacked the nerve, among other things. You sound like you hate him. I do. He deserves to be hated. When you spoke of him before, you didn't seem to care much one way or the other. Well, that was when he was dead. Now he's back and ruining everything. She cast her eyes to the empty table in the kitchen where the tape recorder usually sat. They took it yesterday morning. So what? I held up my notebook and pen. The tape was never for us anyway. I drew my usual chair away from the wall and sat down. Why do you still want to talk to me? If you say he wasn't the killer, then I believe you. She smiled with such relief that I felt bad about what I had to ask next. But what about the rest of it? She tucked her knees up to her chest. She seemed so young all of a sudden. I remembered how I had thought she was a fast girl. I remembered thinking that she seemed older and felt disgusted with myself. And I felt guilty for thinking about her the way I sometimes did when we were alone. There was only a year difference between our ages, but she didn't need anyone thinking about her like that. Nathaniel Cody, she said, was a filthy bastard. So it's true. No, it's not true. Why does it matter? Because it matters. It doesn't, I told you. But I knew she was lying. She wouldn't look at me. She hunched her shoulders. Tell me the truth. I am. What have you left out? What does it matter? Marie shouted, the only time she ever raised her voice to me. Even if it was true, it doesn't mean the rest of it's a lie. I told you he was terrible, and you were happy enough. But now you want to know it all, every dirty detail, as if that's the only part that's important. Marie, what he did, it is important. No, it isn't. It only is if I say it is. I don't. I sat back quietly. I didn't understand. I still don't, and I suppose that I never will. But I did understand this. If she gave them anything on her stepfather, they would let her live. But everything she had told me, her story, would be erased as if it never was. Okay, I said, then keep going. Finish it. I can't. He's tainted it, she said, and I couldn't tell whether she meant Nathaniel Cody or Benjamin Pilson. Well, isn't there a way to untaint it? I asked. If Cody didn't do it, there must be a way to prove that he didn't. She looked down and toyed with her shoelaces. Marie, there must be a way. There is, she said. But I don't want to ask you to do it. She took a deep breath, and I leaned forward so she could tell me what she wanted me to do. When she was through, I won't say I wasn't nervous, but I agreed. Okay, then, she said. Go get Pilson. Tell him I'm ready to tell him where my stepfather is. I rang Pilson and caught him at Mrs. B's. He said he would be there within the hour, but he showed up not 10 minutes later, storming through the station like he owned it, which he probably got away with because my father wasn't there. When I heard him on the stairs, I made sure to step back to avoid catching the swinging door in my face. Miss Muse, he said. Don't call me that, Marie said and scowled. It is your name, isn't it? So is Marie. How about I just call you Miss, then? Marie shrugged. Well, then, what did you want to tell me? I wanted to tell you that Nathaniel Cody didn't kill Peter Knapp, or Angela Hawke, or Beverly Nordell, or any of the others. He never even met them. I think we both know that he did. He didn't. He wasn't innocent of much, but he's innocent of that. That story won't hold up for much longer. I'm circulating photographs of your stepfather around Grand Junction and Loop City, even around the university at Madison. It won't amount to anything. Pilson looked at me and laughed. A short bark. We'll see. We will see, you horse's ass. Marie, I cautioned, and she clamped her mouth shut. Why don't you tell me where the blood went? Why don't you tell me where the blood went? She said. If you're so set on things. Cody will tell me himself when we catch him. No one's going to find Nathaniel Cody unless I tell you where he is. We're broadening the search daily, but so far they'd come up with squat. Pilson's eyes hardened. He wanted Marie to fear him, but the truth was that he feared her. Marie was someone he couldn't intimidate. No matter which of his many faces he presented her with, Marie remained the same, unflappable and threatening. All right, then, where is he? He's just where I said he was. Marie crossed her arms. He's dead and buried with my mother. And since there's no other way to make you believe me, I'm going to let you dig them up. I'm going to tell you where they are. Pilson shifted his weight, impatient and maybe nervous. If she was lying, she was getting better at it. And where's that? Oh, I'm not telling you, Marie said. But as usual, I will tell Michael.